Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and Harley lovers around the world, welcome back to the Knuckles Up podcast, presented by Sykes Harley-Davidson. Knuckles Up is a dive into the world of all things Harley-Davidson, recorded at the illustrious Sykes H-D, the South Coast premier destination for Harleys, nestled in the beautiful Sussex South Downs. Great intro from me. I don't up often, but there we go. Am I allowed to swear? That's a question. If it's beeped, I just swore, so ignore that one. We're going to crack straight on, professional as always. I'm Elliot from Sykes Harley-Davidson. I will be your host through this wonderful journey of all things Harley. The Knuckles Up podcast drops on the last Friday of the month. You can watch and subscribe over on the Sykes H-D YouTube channel, and you can listen wherever you get your podcasts. We are currently, like I say, on YouTube. We are also on Spotify and Apple, and we're working our way out across various podcasting channels. So if you can't find us somewhere, you can probably find us elsewhere. So we're back again for another episode. I'm really stoked to be back. I mean, we're actually getting through them now, which is quite good. This time we are going to be discussing Harley-Davidson performance. Now, I myself am a little bit underqualified for this chat, so I've brought in one of the technicians from here at Sykes Harley-Davidson, Mr. Rob Smith. Welcome, Rob.
Hello.
How are we doing?
Not too bad.
You really don't want to be here, do you?
Well, not my forte.
Trying to drag a tech out of the workshop when he's scrubbed up well, he's put a shirt on, he's washed his hands. So we're honestly, the effort that Rob has made to come and sit down with me today is paramount. So thank you very much, Rob. It is a pleasure to have you sat here with us. So like I say, we're going to be chatting Harley-Davidson performance. You very much are the go-to guy, I think, here at Sykes for all things performance, or at least to a certain extent. So, as mentioned to our listeners, you are a tech here at Sykes. How long have you been here for?
I now have been here just about 2 years, I think.
2 years?
Yeah.
That's so... Well, I mean, when was it you first came on board then?
I think it was September, October, something
like that.
It
would be the podcasty guy and told Steve off for that last time as well.
Let me all the way through, mate. Yeah, something like that. And then I was at Lakeside for 4 years before that.
Nice. So 5 years total of being a Harley-Davidson technician.
Is it 5, 6?
5 years, 6
something
years?
Something like that. Yeah, in between it all. Near enough.
So you've had a good bit of experience with Harleys as a whole. So you've just mentioned you come from Lakeside. So yep. What was your journey from Lakeside then to Sykes?
So obviously, as many of our customers, viewers may know, obviously Lakeside shut down. So me and Donna on the service counter got made redundant. So we, then we're looking for other work. And Sykes being what it is, it was a choice destination, even if it was so far away, because we were living very, very close to Lakeside at the time. So it was an easy commute for us.
So for anyone that doesn't know geography in the UK, I mean, roughly what county is Lakeside?
So it's, at the bottom of Essex.
Yeah.
So it was it's a bit of a journey down here. So,
that's quite the change, isn't it, from Essex to the Sussex sunny South Downs?
It was tumultuous, the journeys.
That's a word.
For it was more than a year in the end, I think. I was, commuting. So it took a bit of doing, but now I live closer than everybody. So
that's perks, eh? So that's quite the journey going from Lakeside to obviously where we are down here. You've mentioned there, that kind of like the notion, I guess, of Sykes almost in a way. Like,
yeah,
it's a bit of a behemoth kind of in a way, isn't it? You don't really, yeah. I suppose you don't sort of get a sense of like what it is until you're actually here.
No.
And we always talk about it being a destination dealership, but it really is, isn't it?
Yeah,
what was like your first kind of impressions when you came down here and you saw the site for yourself for the first time?
Well, obviously it's considerably bigger than you're going to go to most dealerships. I'd say probably all of them.
Yeah.
It's difficult to say, obviously, but the facility, if you like, and what happens here and the things that you do, it's not boring or mundane. It's not the same sort of thing all day, every day. We do an awful lot of, out of the box, if you like. Yeah. So, and that's what makes it exciting. That's what sort of drew me here, and being what it was, and always busy. And it's there is a draw, if you like, if you want to be the best, do the best, all that sort of stuff.
Well, that's interesting. I think from your perspective then, as being a tech that's worked at Lakeside and then knowing of Sykes, I guess, within the industry.
Yeah.
I guess that there's that sort of difference aside from everybody else. And like, yes, there are some phenomenal dealerships out there, but it's such a unique place here.
Yeah.
And what blows people away, I think, is like when they look beyond, I guess, the initial kind of layers of what you would associate with a Harley-Davidson dealership. But yeah, those different things, the outside the box stuff. So, I mean, outside of the box, as far as performance, things like that, you know, you are very much a performance guy. You've had a few projects on the go. I mean, you've got a tasty looking BMW. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about German engineering or anything on a Harley-Davidson themed podcast, but you've got your hand in many different areas of performance, right? So, but from a Harley perspective, what's it like to tune up Harley-Davidsons?
Well, I mean, it's not the most difficult thing in the world, mainly because of the Screamin Eagle catalogue and the aftermarket for it. It's what the bikes are all about. It's what people like to do, whether it's making them look one way or go one way. They're not, what's the right word? They're very individual.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most drawing things for Harley Davidson for a lot of people, I guess. So it's not the most challenging thing in the world because a lot of people know precisely what they want out of their bike as well. So it's easy to have, you know, you sit down consultations with people and, you know, decide what they really, really want, steer them in the right direction, listen to what you know is, you know, what generally is what a lot of people like and want, and you can, give people good ideas about precisely what they need, what parts, what brands to use and things like that, just to make sure that what they're getting at the end of the day and what they're paying their hard-earned money for is precisely what they want.
Yeah. So, I mean, you kind of touched there on like individuality. There's obviously that notion of being an individual when it comes to Harley-Davidson, but as far as how you go about it, is the tuning process for Harley quite unique to them, or do you see associations between like similar brands?
I think it is very unique to Harley myself. That some of the brands that make parts for Harley, it does become similar, but they are quite unique in the way that they are. The tuning, if you're talking like specifics of like maps that go onto bikes and things like that, that is all. It's not generic, but it's all done in the same way. Yeah.
Only so many ways to skin a cat, right?
Yeah, kind of. And yeah, the parts is the important bit really, and that is what's more unique with Harleys. There's a you know, and we've all seen the catalogues. There's
yeah, I mean they're like doorstop kind of things,
so
aren't they?
You can go wild really. So
I mean that's I guess something really, you know, sets Harley aside, is that such a depth and a range of in bikes, you know, catalogue wise, but then also a depth and a range of upgrade performance, things like that. You know, there are so many different unique parts for every single model. And although we sort of jokingly say, you know, the catalogue's quite a hefty thing, I mean it's a borderline weapon when you look at the sides of these things.
Yeah, there's a lot in there.
With all of the choice that's there, I mean, are there any performance upgrades that you prefer over others? Obviously, there's all the Screamin Eagle stuff. There's a lot of aftermarket things out there. But when it comes to you doing customization or performance upgrades, are there any specific upgrades that you prefer over others?
Well, I mean, it depends, again, on what a customer's after. If it's just purely me personally, then, you know, a cam is just the best bang for buck, if you like. Yeah, an aftermarket cam. Screamin Eagle cams are fantastic. They are limited by what they can do, obviously, because of legislation and things like that. But aftermarket cams, all of the, you know, the top brands, Fueling and S&S and Andrews and all that, they make incredible cams for different applications depending on what you're doing with the bike, compression ratios and cylinder sizes and things like that. So there's lots and lots and lots to choose from. It is easily, even if you obviously got a stock bike, just a stage 2 is my favourite go-to thing. It pleases people no end, and they don't have to spend an earth's worth of money to, you know, really transform their bike. It makes a lot of difference.
And what is it? I mean, so for anyone that doesn't know, you can go stage 1 right up to stage 4, but what is it about a stage 2 that, you know, feels kind of unique to you or has that appeal in a way?
It's a difficult one, really. I suppose it's just because the bikes, the sound of these bikes is what really turns people on. If you like,
it's that Harley noise, isn't it?
And a cam just accentuates that tenfold, especially aftermarket cams. And I suppose that's really kind of what it's all about. But then on top of it, you do get the considerable bump in performance, which is, again, kind of what it's all about.
So what is that jump from a stage 1 to stage 2? I mean, for someone like me that is a bit out of the loop or a bit of a noob when it comes to those upgrades, what would you think is that easy to understand jump between what is a stage 1 and what is a stage 2?
So with a stage 1, you're changing an exhaust and an air cleaner most of the time and putting a tune on the bike. And the exhaust and the air cleaner are there to let the motor breathe better than what it does out of the factory, because again, they're sort of limited by what they can do with catalytic converters and making the noise emissions and things like that. So we make them noisy, stick a nice air cleaner on there that lets loads of air go through the motor, and then that sort of is what you need to be able to do a stage 2. And then you can change internal engine parts to make the bike work.
And is it a significant difference between just from a stage 1 to a stage 2?
It is the biggest jump that you'll probably feel. So if you're talking from stage 2 to 3 to 4 after that, and until you get sort of stage 4 and you're doing balls and whatnot, 131 kits, you ain't gonna get the big jump in performance. So like I say, a stage 2 bang for buck is the biggest noticeable difference, and is where you're gonna get your fun.
Nice. So that's where the iconic sound and the iconic sort of, I guess, performance comes from in a way. It's like torque slinging monsters and all the different names that you get associated. It's like marketing, like beauty in a way. It's like how many different ways can you talk about like how fierce a motor is? I mean, like biblical power I've seen is a lot of one, like torque slinging monsters, tarmac devouring. Like they do, some good like taglines for the upgrade. So you've obviously spoken then like stage 1 to stage 2. I mean, for say if it was me, first Harley, I've had my Harley for, I don't know, say 12 months to a year. I want to get some performance upgrades. What would you recommend for someone like me that say is a bit of a noob rider? What's the best way for me to get into performance upgrades on Harleys?
Again, it's so very...
Is that a rabbit hole that I've just opened?
It is a little bit, because it depends on what people want. So a lot of the time people, on a tourer, a cam is a great idea, but if you've got yourself a low rider, something like that, maybe just some decent suspension and some good tyres is a really good way to make your bike feel a little bit fresher. You can ride it a little bit harder. You'll start feeling a little bit more confident on the bike. It will give you a bit more feedback maybe, and then you can start considering putting some bigger engine parts in there and doing the whole shebang. But
I suppose there's little steps, isn't it? You don't want to throw straight a 131 stage 4 kit at someone that's only been on their bike for like 18 months.
And that as well, but at the same time, the cams, depends again every single time on what the customer really wants. You got to sit down, talk about it, and really try to understand what they're trying to achieve. You know what I mean? Because a Screamin Eagle cam, a lot of the time, it's a bit milder than an aftermarket cam. It could be what someone wants on their tourer, just for a little bit more rideability, low down in the RPMs, just a little bit more torque. And so, it's one of them.
I suppose it's different, but depending on model as well, because I imagine the performance upgrades for what could fundamentally be a very lightweight bike compared to like a big lump of a CVO, those performance differences. So when you talk about consultation, is it actually saying, right, what does the person want to get out of it? Do you have to steer people to be like, okay, that maybe is a bit much for you in a way?
Sometimes people don't know what they really want. Some people just want to throw money at things sometimes, and they don't get the best for themselves that they could potentially with the same amount of money. And just trying to understand what people do with their bike. Some people go out on a Sunday and just go crazy for 2 hours, and a set of tyres may be the best thing for them. So instead of sticking cams in your bike and maybe not enjoying it just as much as maybe you should, or maybe somebody else would. Just trying to get the best out of what people use their bikes for.
I suppose like opening up a jar of wasps and then wondering where you've got stung. That's probably a good analogy for too much performance. So that, I mean, it is quite interesting because there are so many different applications of performance when it comes to different bikes. And like you've said, just even the Harley catalogue alone, not even bringing in aftermarket stuff is pretty significant, right? And I guess that's part of it, like having the expertise as a performance aficionado, so to speak, means that you can kind of say to people, look, what is it you want to get out of it? And that's interesting perspective, actually, because I imagine there's probably a lot of people that come in and go, I want a stage 4, I want it to be really loud, I just want it to go mental, but you're kind of like, okay, do you really want to get that out of your kind of bike in a way?
Yeah, because I mean, the rideability of these bikes, sometimes if people want to go bananas, it doesn't take away from it necessarily. You can obviously tune these bikes to be perfectly rideable. Yeah. However, really big cams, low down in the RPMs, they are a bit lumpier and they are a bit more difficult to ride around. And it does sometimes take an experienced rider to, know precisely what they're getting on and to be able to ride around it a little bit.
Like, has there ever been an instance where you've kind of had to steer someone away from bigger upgrades?
No, I wouldn't do that.
Like, money, get the money in. See, that's a good Sykes member of staff there. Pay the money. We don't care what happens to your bike. No. I mean, there's been some pretty nuts upgrades that have come through here. I mean, just even like new stock as well. So last year we did a 131 stage 4 kit on an El Diablo. Yep. Which looked absolutely stunning. I mean, I'm a massive fan of that bike as it is, but stick a 131 kit on it, it's like even crazier.
Yeah, we got a customer from up in Essex actually who's done that, and he stuck some really nice bits on his bike, an aftermarket cam, and with the 131, something that works really well, obviously. And all together with some suspension and some tyres.
What suspension did he have on that one, do you know?
He went with Öhlins in the end.
Big fan of Öhlins here, aren't we? We really, do love an Öhlins suspension.
Screamin Eagle, obviously. Öhlins, they've come on board and they're making Screamin Eagle branded Öhlins stuff, which is really good for us as a Harley-Davidson dealer.
I guess it's the point of association, and it's, I guess, reassurance from a customer perspective, knowing that there are synergies between these brands say, look, you're getting the absolute utmost performance out of it. I mean, Öhlins suspension have been on a lot of the project bikes that we've done. Notably the MT2 bike that we did this year for the Trailblazer bike that you had a bit of a hand in on. There's so much that goes into it, and I guess that's a different point as well. Is that although the off the street kind of upgrades, there is so much more that we actually do here.
Oh yes.
With Speed and Custom, like that's kind of it. It's a case of, right, how big your budget is, how big your imagination is, and how soon can we get the parts almost.
Pretty much.
So it must be quite exciting then for you to kind of come in and have your hand in different areas of the company, different areas of customization and stuff like that, but still know that you are giving someone really an absolute phenomenal piece of machinery at the end of the day. Yeah,
it's again, goes back to wanting to work here, really. Alongside some of the guys that work here, some very, very clever guys, and have been doing it for a long, long, long time. And so it's it's a pleasure.
Well, it's good to hear. I'm sure Steve, the boss, would be proud to hear that you like working here. You imagine that you come on the podcast and go, I don't actually really like my job. That'd be really awkward. It'd be like, I don't know what to do with the podcast anymore. So, I mean, some great tips that for someone wanting to get into stuff. I mean, that's a big part, I think, of, the Sykes ethos, I guess, in a way. It's like, yes, we do want to take your money. We are a business at the end of the day. But if you want to go through an exploration journey on performance, things like that, there are guys like Rob here that can help you through it. I mean, for someone like me, I've tried to learn as much as I can in the time that I've been here, but still, like, it really is a bottomless pit almost to a certain extent.
No one ever knows everything. You got to be humble, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and that's sort of it. But I guess, from that Sykes perspective, to say, look, you can come in, you can pick the brains of the techs. That we are an open door dealership at the end of the day, and that's something I think that Sykes really sets itself aside from everybody else. There are some other fantastic dealerships out there as well, which I'm sure probably share with the same ethos, but to know that someone can kind of come in and have that one-to-one, I think is, a real sort of, it's a good thing to be able to offer out to customers in a way.
Yeah.
And with a lot of like the progress of Harley-Davidson over the last 3 years, as far as like performance upgrades, we saw the 117 come in last year. There's been a lot of forward progress. And obviously with, what was it, the 121 this year on the CVO, that was a big leap forwards, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's phenomenal piece of kit.
It's really exciting as well to, the variable valve timing. I mean, everything that they've done to the bike, even just the shift drum's quite exciting for us. It's just like the most mundane little thing.
That's how you identify a motorcycle nerd.
It's really good. And being that it's variable valve timing, for me, the most exciting thing is obviously seeing what brands come up with, aftermarket brands and Harley, because I'm sure they will, but aftermarket brands, and see sort of what R&D they're doing with how the new variable valve timing's working and things like that, and what we're going to do with it. It's going to be exciting to...
So variable valve timing for, again, complete noob, what's the difference that variable valve timing brings for a Harley-Davidson motor?
So, I mean, it's commonplace in the industry. It's a difficult application with the engine that we have, but basically it gives you more torque down low and more horsepower up the top, because you can change the time that the valves open depending on engine RPM, and that's the very simple way of explaining it.
Because it is basically a case that a V-twin gets to around 3,500 RPM, dumps all of the torque all at the same time, and that's basically it, right?
And that's where you're left. Yeah, you've gone through your torque curve, and then you start going higher in the rev, and you lose depending on what cam you've got in there.
So that's what the variable valve timing does. It gives better delivery across the range then. And we saw the introduction with that with the RevMax engine as well, right? So that was the first introduction of variable valve timing within the Harley-Davidson line. And again, that has been... well, it really is a revolution in its own right. The application of that across the Sportster, Nightster, and the Pan America goes to show that there is dexterity in Harley's offering. And now with the 121, there is a lot of choice from a performance perspective. Yeah. Looking back through the years as well, the development of engines for Harley, now where we are with that 121, where do you see performance for Harley going over the next few years?
Well, it's difficult. I mean, performance, the Revolution Max is the one. I'm waiting for some cams to come out for that. I think uptake with it will be a bit slower because it is a fundamentally different product, obviously, whereas the big twin, as we know it, the Milwaukee 8 is still, its architecture is the same as back down to a 107 back in the day. So it's but I think cams in a Revolution Max and some bits and pieces on them, that could be where it really is, because I mean, you've ridden a Pan America. Obviously they're quite a machine, really.
And that's I guess that's kind of it, knowing the difference in the offering compared to your standard V-twins. Now with the variable valve timing coming in for those engines, and with the Revolution Max, there's a lot of engineering that's gone into Harley over the last couple of years.
An awful lot.
And that's the crazy part about it. I mean, the Revolution Max engine, for anyone that hasn't tried it, honestly, get booked in for a demo. It's a phenomenal piece of kit. Even from the Nightster, how feisty a little bike that is.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I really, really, really like the Nightster.
For a 975, get away from,
it's still a 1000cc bike. It's fast. It's a really, really
stick it in
bike.
Sport mode as well. I think it's it all, definitely open you up, I think, to different styles of riding, especially with the Pan America as well. It's adventure awaits. It's the adventure ultimate multi-tool, and it really is what that thing can do both on and off road.
And we're 2 years down the line now as well. They're a 2-year-old product, just about. So any woes that people might have, they don't need to have them. They come and get your bum on one of the bikes and go and just ride it.
Yeah, and we've really championed that bike here, haven't we? I mean, it's something we've just got on board with. We've embraced it, and we do absolutely love it. So if anyone does want to come down, get booked in for a demo on a Pan America. We've got some great on and off roads actually on our doorstep. Also, should note, if you do get booked in for a demo on the Pan America before the... I'm going to say 5th of December. I'm going to drop terms and conditions for this offer down below, so don't quote me on this. But if you get booked in before some point in December, check the terms and conditions. Come in, get booked in for a demo. You will be put into a prize draw to potentially win your very own Pan America, brand new, off the showroom floor. And you'll even get a day out at the Harley-Davidson Adventure Centre up in Wales to go and get skilled up to how to use your new ultimate adventure bike. So be sure to check that out. Be sure to get booked in for a demo. Like we said, absolutely phenomenal piece of kit. So I'm going to take a super quick break, which we always do, for me to go and turn the camera off, turn it back on again, because professional podcast like that. So bear with us, listeners. There'll be a quick message from our sponsors, or it's the please stand by, but we will be back momentarily. So welcome back, everybody. We took our brief hiatus to turn the camera on and off again because we're professional podcasters here at Sykes Harley-Davidson. We might actually get around to it one day where I can figure out how to make the camera record more than 25 minutes, or we just exclusively do 25-minute podcasts, which I don't know. Anyway, so we were discussing, obviously, HD performance, which is the overriding subject for us here for this episode. We've just been interrupted by Craig, the sales manager. Hi, Craig. Thanks for spoiling the podcast. Shout out, Craig. So we touched on the 121. We touched on Rev Max, variable valve timing. But, you know, there are some leaps forward in performance upgrades. But what is the absolute limit to performance upgrades? So we've got stage 4131. Like, is that the actual limit to a standard V twin? I mean, how far could you really go?
Well, I mean, it's not the limit by a long way. There's a considerable amount that you can do on top of that. People that really, really want to, you know, go fast on their bikes, I'm sure they'll be aware that there's a company called Trask that make turbos and that sort of stuff. You know, there are aftermarket cylinder heads with enormous ports that you can get and 2mm oversized valves and intake manifolds that you know, they sometimes use the Screamin Eagle part and they port that and make it even bigger and make big square ports. You know, once you get sort of past 100, well, it's subjective really, but you know, 140, 50 horsepower, you know, you're going to have a welded crank pin and things like that. So S&S make fantastic products. Good crankshafts with uprated rods as well, because you can start, you know, bending rods, and they have a closed end, so they've got better oil flow to them and things like that. There's lots and lots and lots that you can do after a 131, if you like. I think I've seen up to, you know, 145 cubic inch motors.
So what does that actually do, like, from a, you know, like you spoke about, like, boring things out, things like that. What, like, how far could you actually take a V-twin before you're basically, like, you know, a millimetre worth of wall to the fisting?
So it's not necessarily that's the limit. You could potentially, you know, make a cylinder. You would have to completely remake it. It wouldn't be anything. You wouldn't bore it. It'd be another part that was, you know, CNC machined. And the real limiting factor, don't quote me, is where the posts are that are in the cylinder head that hold onto the rocker shaft, because you end up with your pushrod angle. You would end up with a pushrod angle that was too acute. So
is that's where you start to get to the actual limit of what you can do performance-wise on a Harley-Davidson?
I don't really know where it would be at the moment. Obviously, they seem to be getting bigger and bigger. Companies out in the States, they go mad for it, obviously, and they have all sorts of you know, R&D that they do themselves, and they've got massive, you know, dealerships and people that they have to do that sort of stuff.
So there's been quite a few crazier bikes, shall we say, that have come out of Speed and Custom, notably Choo Choo, Mother. I mean, I've sworn already on this episode, so we'll put a bleep over that, pretend that I swore. But so that was that Battle of the Kings entry?
Tom done that before I was here.
Was that before you were here?
Yeah, so that was a fantastic bike. I really, really liked
that was supercharged. That was
a turbo.
Yeah.
Yep. Off of again, don't quote me, off an old Iveco truck or something like that, or a new Iveco truck. It was it's pretty cool.
Crazy engineering, right? And that's, I think, what blew me away. Like, when I first came in, I was like, you know, still getting to terms with like stage upgrades and stuff like that. And then I saw pictures of that bike, and I was like,
that was brilliant.
Like, that's crazy.
Not even, you take out of it the fact that, you know, it had a turbo on it. The attention to detail, the small things on that bike are brilliant. That's one of my favourite bikes, that is.
It is a good looking bike, that one. So, I mean, limits there as far as the upgrades on V-twins, but away from V-twins, I do understand, Rob, that you're very much a big two-stroke guy, right?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's where...
So I'm just going to say, I'm going to interrupt briefly because Rob being a two-stroke guy, I'm actually a die-hard four-stroke guy. Motocross specifically. Yeah. Let's not get away. But, I mean, you know, that there's very much, I think, a sense of animosity between two-strokes and four-strokes, right? I do love you to pieces, you are so wrong on two-strokes.
We could argue about that.
We could. Like, that's the thing. I mean, as a motocross rider, there's nothing worse than just all around you, and then the smell of two-stroke as you're waiting for your bike to kick back in some power again.
That's the good bit.
But you can't hold a two-stroke wide open.
You can.
Well, I mean, it's not recommended, but still. So, okay, what is the appeal of two-strokes for you? I know what the appeal of four-strokes is for me, and I don't know why anybody likes two-strokes over four-strokes, but everyone's entitled to their opinion. So, Rob, what is the appeal of specifically old two-strokes? Because that's your thing, isn't it?
So really, it's just kind of where I cut my teeth as a kid. Having a scooter or even smaller bikes before that with my dad. And as soon as I was allowed to ride a bike, I had a scooter, and I took it apart and I put a bigger engine in it and a bigger carburetor and a better variator.
Did you drill out your exhaust? That sounded awful.
No. We had a very nice Malozzi exhaust on my bike. It's
classy, that one.
Yeah, but yeah, it's so kind of where I cut my teeth, and then it just went from there. Really, I started buying old Kawasaki triples, H1s, H2s. My father-in-law is mad for Suzuki two-strokes. At the moment, I've got a little old T350 that you've probably seen.
Yeah, it's a good-looking bike. That.
Down the yard.
I mean, as much as I don't want to openly admit that I've just been caught saying a two-stroke is nice, it's a very nice bike.
So, yeah, really, just sort of like take them apart, put them together, to rebuild crankshafts, center seals, and just make something that's really, really old and knackered and make it mechanically perfect.
I think that's what was always the appeal for me as motocross bikes. Although, yes, being a kid, being able to go and just be an absolute reprobate in fields, tearing things up, stuff like that. But it's a good access point to mechanics almost in a way, because motocross bikes are so simple.
Yeah.
Like really basic. You can strip the whole thing down, rebuild it back again, relatively quickly. Yeah. And then you wonder what that spare bolt was that came out that you've not fitted back into it. Do that.
Well, you find quite often, like the guys in the workshop, an awful lot of the time, mechanics like two-strokes because of their simplicity. So they're kind of a joy to work on. They're very sort of like purposeful. Everything in there. They're.
I guess in its simplest form, it's like Lego Technic for mechanics almost,
kind of,
because it's pretty. There's not.
They are rudimentary, really. I mean, obviously the later. I mean, you can get injected two-strokes now and all sorts of stuff.
That was always a thing I think that really blew me away. I think for me, growing up as a motocross rider in sort of like the late 90s, early 2000s, the technology then is very different to what it is now.
Of course, yeah.
I think I can't remember what my first KX75 was on Kawasaki for a while, and then I found Honda's CRF 250s.
That's what I had,
and that was like, just the sound, proper quintessential cliche motocross bike, Honda CRF 250. God, what a great bike that is! And that's where you end up with loads of broken bones, broken collarbones. And if anyone's seen previous episodes, that wasn't actually a motocross bike. I was responsible this time, but. Yeah, you can guarantee if you've ridden a motocross bike over the years, you've probably got a broken collarbone or wrist or sorts.
Well, I stopped before I did that. I realised that I was terrible on a motocross bike.
See, I was terrible and I just kept riding. It was just I don't know why I get broken. Go, no, it's not me. It's the bike. I'm not crap at riding motocross bikes.
Stick with track days on proper bikes. Tarmac for me.
So what's your go-to for tarmac then? Do you like? I mean, that's an interesting one actually. With track day stuff, would you ever take a Harley on a track day?
Yeah, of course.
What sort of bike? What would be the ultimate Harley for a track day? Would you?
Well, it depends. I say
rabbit hole. I'm just opening up.
So my FXR's been around Brands Hatch.
Nice.
So, but it's not quite just a standard FXR. It's got Kawasaki front end in it, and fancy swing arm and bits and pieces. But yeah, so it's a very old Harley. Oh, it's not very old. It's 1993, but it's Harley. Goes around the track.
I mean, there was a lot of race bikes through the years. That heyday of Harley going into superbike racing. Like for me, I don't know what the specifics were, but there's a lot of great looking Harley race bikes out there.
Oh yeah,
like we've got one in the showroom here at Sykes. If you want to come down and have a look at
you should definitely come and have a look.
Yeah, we've got the drag bike here as well.
Yep, the Destroyer.
Why is it called the Destroyer? Is it just because I get that goes back to Harley marketing, doesn't it? Like torque devouring.
I think that is precisely what it is. Yeah.
Well, you're not going to have a drag bike that's called like the pony or something, is it? Like it needs to be ferocious. Yeah. So two strokes. Obviously, there's kind of a good bit of background there as far as like where you came from, but all day we are Harley-Davidson. So what is your favourite Harley-Davidson of all time?
I guess we kind of just touched on it. I have an FXR. Yeah. They kind of limited. You don't really see very many of them. Yeah.
And why the FXR for you? I mean, what makes that bike, stand out amongst all the other Harleys?
They're quite unique. The frame design, having the headstock being gusseted stronger, if you like, than a Dyna.
Yeah.
Yeah, triggering lots of people at the moment.
If anyone wants to, write in and complain of some of the opinions Rob's got, that's absolutely fine. We'll probably file them away somewhere and forget about them.
Mr. Buell himself having some influence, how much that was, I'm not sure, but into designing the frame and making it a bit stiffer. So more of a rider's bike is the FXR.
So that's an interesting point, actually, with all the, not changes with Harley over the years, but like with AMF back in the day, like Buell, things like that. Like, how much of an influence do you think has that had on sort of Harley's journey throughout the years?
Oh God, it's a difficult one to say, really. But obviously a great deal, I'd say. Being that the Screamin Eagle parts catalogue is what it is, I think that's all you need to really look at to see just how much influence is there, and obviously the racing from back in the day and what happened. I can't say I know a lot about it, so it's a bit difficult. But yeah, I'd say it's had a great deal to do with.
So that performance side of stuff, where the racing series have been like super bikes or drag bikes, and then most notably,
baggers.
Yeah, I was just about to say most notably recently,
Yeah.
bagger racing is just lunacy.
Yeah.
Like absolutely crazy, and especially so at like some of the tracks out in the US. I mean, Laguna Seca especially.
Yeah, you see him coming over the corkscrew.
Watching a bagger go over the corkscrew is just mental. I mean, would you ever like have a go at something like that? Do you reckon?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
We'll get you signed up for the bagger series next year.
I would, very much like to do that.
I don't know if we'll be able to convince the bosses to, pay for a Sykes bagger race team.
I've tried hard enough.
Okay, John, if you're watching this, and Steve, can we get some budget, please, approved for Rob to go and race baggers next year?
Let me just take one round Brands Hatch. Just
yeah, just to test one first. To well, that'd be a cool experience, wouldn't it?
I'm pretty good round Brands Hatch. It'd be quite good.
I've done it once on a track day in a car, and just that first corner catches you so off guard.
No.
With all the camber that just goes constantly away from you.
It's great. I had another bike previously, and I think I've probably done more than 4,000-5,000 miles just on track. And most of it was Brands.
Fair play. Is that just because it's like the closest to you?
It was easily accessible. Yeah, it's a cheap track day, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went up and down the country.
What's the best track day you've ever done?
Cadwell Park, without shadow of a doubt.
Is that the one that's got the little jump through the midpoint?
Yeah, I've got some fancy pictures. I'll have to show you.
I'll have to whip some of those out. That's a cool one. That'd be a story for another day. Like, here's pictures of Rob going over the jump at Cadwell Park. So, I mean, there's been some great insight there into performance as a whole, bit of background there for you, Rob, and I think I've taken probably a bit too much of your time today. I appreciate you coming out of the workship. I really appreciate you getting scrubbed up and not coming in and getting grease all over the lovely podcasting equipment. It does scrub up all right. I mean, just, the difference between you and the warehouse. Thank you for making the effort, mate. I really appreciate that. So there you go, folks. That was a little brief insight for you into HD performance. If you want to know any more, you can obviously reach out to the service guys here. We are always here and more than happy. I say we are more than happy. I'm not going to talk to you about performance parts, but Rob will probably chew your ear off. So if you do want to get into the market for some upgrades, be sure to reach out to us here at Sykes H-D. You can get in contact via email, info@sykeshd.com. You can get to our website, again, sykeshd.com. Find us on social. We are out and about everywhere. If you want to call us, carrier pigeon, whatever your preferred contact method is, we are more than welcome to take that on. So that about wraps things up for this episode of the Knock Us Up podcast. Thank you everybody for listening and watching wherever you get your podcasts. Let us know whether you still want to see more, whether you want us to just shut up and fed up with me listening to my own voice. I mean, I get sick to death having to listen back to me whilst doing the editing. I mean, if I can put up with it long enough, then I'm sure everybody at home can as well. So anything else you want to see from us, guys, please do reach out. Let us know what you want to see from future episodes. If you've got any questions you want to know, please do send them over. We can look to do some listeners' questions in future segments. But as mentioned, the Knuckles Up podcast drops on the last Friday of the month. You can watch and subscribe over on the Sykes H-D YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you again, everybody, for listening. I've been Elliot from Sykes Harley-Davidson. This has been Mr. Rob Smith, and we will see you in the next episode. Cheers.